Hello, everyone. As I mentioned in the course introduction, I have some great guests visiting every week to tell you more about using automation, algorithms, and AI in real journalistic work. Today, I'm very excited to have Pablo Fernandez with us to talk about algorithms and automation um, in fact-checking. And Pablo is the director for editorial innovation at Chequeado, which is a fact-checking organization based in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Pablo, hello and welcome. It's great to have you with us today. Thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge of this field with the students in the MOOC.
Thank you. Thanks for this space. Thank you.
So I wanted to kind of start off, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about Chequeado in general and what it does. And then I'm also really curious to hear more about your role there. You know, what does director of editorial innovation really mean for you in terms of what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, first of all, Chequeado is a fact-checking organization. We were created in 2010, like more than 8 years ago. So we were the first in the region, the first in the southern hemisphere, and we were part of the first 10 organizations doing this fact-checking. We were inspired, of course, by factcheck.org and PolitiFact in the US, and also the decoders in France, Le Monde, sorry. And since that moment till today, we have been growing. We are a non-profit. That is kind of unusual, at least here in Argentina, to have like a media outlet being a non-profit. And what we do is fact-checking. Just in case is we find claims in the public discourse, media outlets, public speeches, official recordings of, I don't know, the president saying something in YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And then we try to get to a rating between false and true. We have another exaggerated, unsustainable. And the idea is to get to that point with a method. We have a method with different steps that we follow. We have to call the source. We have to find different sources. And we try to do that, and we have to do that with open data. So if we don't find the data open, we open that. So that is in a nutshell what we do. And then since 2014, we have been doing also debunking. That is what is called now fake news or misinformation. We have been fighting against that even before it was named that way, and because we find things that are not true in social media. So that is more or less what we do. We have three areas: the media outlet, that is maybe the most well-known, and then education and innovation. So that relates also with your other question. I'm director of the editorial innovation area. So what is that? We call innovation is, of course, doing new things, but we think of that in a way of having the space or creating the space to experiment, to create new things out of the usual workflow. Because usually when you, and we are a small organization, but we are doing this for some years now, so maybe you get used to what you are doing. So the innovation area try to focus on new things and creating the workflow to do that. Usually when you are doing your job, you don't have time to, I don't know, research, find new things. So that's why. And editorial is because my background is journalism. I study communication science is the name here. So I usually also do some editorial stuff related with edition and copywriting and everything, the usual that journalists do. So I have that, like the two hats. Make sense?
Yeah. So, you know, it's really interesting to hear you talk about, you know, innovation as kind of stepping out of the traditional workflow. what do you think are some exciting areas in terms of new innovative workflows that are kind of emerging in this area?
Yeah, well, first, just in case, the goal is not only to be like, we don't want to be in a bubble, but we have to have time to research and to create new stuff. The goal is to connect that stuff with the usual workflow of the organization, or in our case, like the fact-checking community is kind of very collaborative. So usually we are not creating only stuff for us, but for other organizations. And some products that we create, and it happens the other way around, are being used by other organizations in the whole world. So it's part of what we do. Answering your question, we care a lot about automation. That is part of what we are talking about today, but also about new formats and ways of reaching people with what we do. That is not, we know that fact checking or even debunking, maybe debunking is a little more, I don't know if entertainer is the word, entertaining, but fact checking for sure is not. Usually it's serious. You have to talk about data. At least in our case, we are not partisan and we try to be balanced. So it's difficult. How usually in this polarized world, you engage people being polarized, and we are not being polarized. So
Right.
we try to think on new formats. I don't know, using GIFs with some humor. We have been doing that right now, maybe for 3 years, and we were one of the first doing that in at least in this community. And we are all the time thinking on new ways on engaging with the audience. We have been doing things in public squares in the city, actually, talking to regular people about, I don't know, investigative reports. We are also doing promise tracking. That is something that in the US is kind of normal, but no one did it before in Argentina. So we try to think on new things and sometimes implement things that we see in other places, but of course change it because our environment is different in South America.
So one of the topics that we talk about this week in the MOOC is using automation to help identify claims that are fact checkable or that are important to fact check. Could you give me sort of an idea of, an overview of how Chequeado is using automation in that way to help sort of spot claims that might be fact checkable?
Yeah. As I told you before, the first step of fact checking is having a claim. Without a claim, we cannot do a fact check. So first, we need to find claim, and a claim has to be fact checkable. I will give you an example. If I told you today is a beautiful day, that is like an opinion. Maybe for you, I don't know. Right now here in Buenos Aires is summer, but it's cold. So I like it because I don't like heat. But maybe other people told you I don't like it. So that is not a fact checkable claim. But if I told you there is, I don't know, X degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, you can fact check me. You can go to a weather report and say, hey, what Pablo told me is true or not. Of course, reality is not that black or white, but I think you understand me. So
Right.
what we are doing right now, and actually for almost 2 years, is using automation to help us find claims automatically. So that actually we started in 2016. We have been in a conference called Tech and Check in Duke University. That was started by Bill Adair and their team. That is also the founder of PolitiFact. There we met also with Will Moy, that is the founder of Full Fact in the UK. So we talked with him and Alexios Mansarlis, that is the director of the International Fact-Checking Network, about, okay, let's do this happen. And because there was like an idea of doing automation for years, but the technology in the last few years moved much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Just to tell you one thing, right now we have speech-to-text recognition. Right now, in 2019, that maybe 2 years ago was impossible to think about. Now it's kind of working.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how it began. And then actually I obtained a fellowship from IFCN, so I visit Full Fact. The white paper that Full Fact created in 2016 was really important, and I suggest everyone to look at that. It kind of created like the fundamentals, and right now we are almost 3 years ahead of that, and it still makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the main part of that, the beginning is finding the claim. Yeah, we decided to do that in Spanish. That is a challenge because there are a lot of tools, and just in case if someone is looking at this, watching this video, and think, hey, maybe this is easier in English and I cannot do it in my language. Yes, you can. Maybe it's difficult, maybe it's harder, but there are tools, and of course you can reach me, and I will help anyone. The idea is that there are tools that maybe work better in English. Just to give an example, is when we started, we work with a technology called NLP, natural language processing, like the concept, and it was much more mature in English in that moment than in Spanish. But we find libraries and tools that we can use. Just to give an example, to find the tenses, the verb tenses. That was much more developed in English. But we were able to create a tool that right now help us finding claims in more than 30 media outlets. It finds claims in the every presidential speech that the president uploads to the official website, um, and then in the Congress transcriptions. And we are also connecting that with a specific content, like, I don't know, maybe we have a discussion here in the Congress 6 months ago related with abortion, and we want to fact check that live. We use a tool to make that happen, and it makes sense. It makes sense because it's something that the newsroom use in their they have a meeting every Monday, and they use it to see if we don't want to miss anything big, and it helps us because of course no one can read 30 media outlets every day,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps us cover the whole country. That is something really important for us. Argentina is big, but it's totally focused on the main cities that are 2 or 3, Buenos Aires. So we try to be as fair as we can, and it helps us on that way.
So, now that you're able to monitor these 30 different media outlets, how many claims get suggested by that system, say on a daily or weekly basis?
Actually, a lot, like, I don't know, maybe 100. But the thing is that usually when you fact check things, it's not like a regular article. I used to work in like breaking news in another media outlet, and you are publishing stuff all day. In fact checking is different because usually maybe a fact check can take you between, I don't know, 2 or 4 days. So you need claims that are important, but maybe you do like, I don't know, 5 a week in a good week, or 2, it depends. So usually the robot, Chequeado, just in case, bring us more claims that we can fact check. But at the same time, this year we have elections in Argentina. So we think that we are going to be able to fact check more. And in that environment, the Chequeado will be much more important than even today. And every week we are adding new features. Right now, we are thinking on adding like a connect search, just to use a regular word, to connect the Chequeado with YouTube transcription, so that the journalist can say, hey, I need to hear this interview. Well,
Mm-hmm.
actually YouTube have subtitles, so we can connect and find the claims there also. It's something that it was an idea in a newsroom from a journalist, and we are trying to develop that in the innovation area.
That sounds really interesting. So of all the claims that Chequeado detects, how many of
Yeah.
those eventually turn into fact checks for the site for you?
Yeah, usually it's like you can think on maybe half of what we publish every week. So it depends. Sometimes if we
Wow.
publish two, maybe it's one. If we publish five, maybe it's two or three. It depends. But it's I didn't tell you this, but it has like a small module of machine learning where
Mm-hmm.
the journalist, it was much more useful in the beginning because in the beginning 2 years ago the Chequeado brought to the newsroom maybe stuff that wasn't that good. Right now it's working properly, but in the beginning the it is still there, but the journalists were able to say, hey, you were wrong. This is not fact checkable.
Mm.
And Chequeado learns from that. So right now, imagine this like the journalists can see claims at the top of their website. That is Chequeado. Actually, the UI right now is like a website where you have the main claims on the top.
Mm-hmm.
So right now is maybe more that we can fact check there. So that is
Yeah.
interesting. But at the same time, it's important for us to be balanced. So it also helps us on finding claims. Maybe we have a claim to fact check related with the government, but we also need to fact check the opposition. And sometimes maybe there is not in the public agenda of that week important claim from the opposition. So Checkout help us also finding that.
So, given that there are, a few claims every week that Chequeado is suggesting that are turned into fact checks, I mean, do you ever worry that the automation might be kind of steering or shaping your coverage in one way or another? And how do you kind of think about trying to balance that coverage? Is it an active process?
Yes, it's an active process. Right now, we think that like totally automation, like having the claim, because we are moving forward and also we are connecting the Chequeado with public databases of data. But we think right now that we need a human in the middle. So
Hmm.
that's very important. That's one thing. Usually, when we see the claims, we decide what to do. But at the same time, and I think that you are asking this, we also care about how the algorithm has been built, how it decides what is fact checkable, and how it decides the media outlets that it reads in some way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is something very important for us. And just to be clear, in the beginning, we fed the algorithm with our fact checks to find what is fact checkable. The algorithm understands what is fact checkable from our fact checks. And this is interesting also. We find when we started working on this, we wanted to be balanced, but we found that we have been balanced because we have been covering without the data, just being every week we try to cover both parties or both poles in this. Argentina is very polarized, similar to the
Mm-hmm.
US right now. And so we try to cover every week both poles, and we find with data when we started building Chequeado that we did it actually. So we fed the algorithm a very balanced mixture of political point of views, and then of course we care about having all the political parties being part of that, and of course it's related with our agenda in talking about tax or themes. We care about politics, economics, and maybe international affairs. Just to be totally clear, we don't cover sports, we don't cover entertainment. That is a decision. And so right now the checkout is only reading content from other media outlets focused on politics and economy. We don't read sports, but it's really easy to do that.
Right.
So that's how it's built.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear more about maybe some of the other ways you might be using algorithms and automation to enhance the work of reporters in your newsroom?
Yes. Yes, perfect. So finding claims is like the first step, and that is something that more or less is working, is more than a prototype. It's being used by the newsroom. That's the first step. So now we are like in the second or third step. The second is claim matching. That is when, you know, politicians, not only politicians, also brands and everyone talk with talking points. Let's say that you have an opinion about something and you keep repeating that, even without thinking on that. But of course, politician has PR that help us build that talking points. So usually when we fact check something, in the future it will be repeated. So as it took us more than a day to create a fact check, sometimes when we publish that fact check, it's out of the agenda, but it will return. So when it returns, and that is where Chequeado will help us, and actually it's helping us. It's a prototype, this feature, but it's when, I don't know, the president here in Argentina repeats something that we already fact checked, the robot tell us, hey, he's repeating the same thing, and we can publish that in social media, and that helps us a lot, because we have a lot of evergreen fact checks, not evergreen, but maybe that can last for a year or 2 years. It depends on the topic, but that makes total sense. And that is something that we and other fact checkers are trying to do, claim matching. What we are trying also to do is like having all the steps done so that the journalists can like almost publish directly to the social networks, like the robot build the whole post for Twitter or for Facebook.
Wow.
So, and then you decide to publish or not. Actually, we use Buffer for social media publishing, and we are thinking on using, like, I don't know, an API to connect the Chequeado with that, so that maybe the journalist can say, yes, this is correct, publish it. This is not correct, don't publish it. And then the robot can learn from that. This is a prototype, but we want to have this working in these elections that we are going to have this year. So
as you're kind of prototyping these different ideas, I mean, what do you think are sort of the big challenges there in terms of really making automation work in this for this type of news work?
Yeah, for us, for sure, it's accuracy. We care a lot about accuracy. So maybe, and of course, you know, right now there are a lot of articles being written by AI in sports, in finance, but what we do is like deciding if something is true or false, and the other ratings in the middle, it's not as 2 + 2 is 4. So accuracy is very important. Even with that man in the middle, or woman, of course, in the middle, it's very important to trust the robot, saying that, okay, check it out, what you bring me is okay. And that is happening with claims, and we want that to happen also with claim matching. But right now it's not there, because you need more language is more complicated. Usually when I always give this example because we have a lot of inflation here. So usually the president can talk about inflation, then he can say the prices are going up, or I don't know, people are going to find a rough month in the supermarket. Just to say some examples. And everyone, every human will understand that he's talking about inflation, but not a robot. So what we are trying to do is teach the robot about at least the main topics that in Argentina or in South America even is inflation, unemployment, things related with the economy. So we focus on some topics. Right now we are choosing some topics where we want the robot to be the best it can be. so that the journalists need it, like feel that it helps them. That is something that is happening right now with claim finding, but we want that to happen with claim matching, because maybe in another with another focus on media, we don't care that much about accuracy, but we care a lot. So we don't want the robot to publish directly or to give us content that is maybe not that accurate. So that is something very important. So we need the robot to speak Spanish in some way.
Right.
It's not that easy.
Right, right. So, you've been building these tools for several years now. Students in this MOOC might be thinking about implementing similar things. I mean, do you have any advice for people working in other news organizations that are looking to build or adopt these types of approaches and tools?
Yes, for sure. First, and just in case, we care a lot about open source and open source tools. Actually, Chequeado is in GitHub, and we have opened a part of it last year, in the last month of last year. So that's important, not only because we are opening our code, and that is something that we think that we have to do, but also because we find, and this is the tip, that there's a lot of tools that you can use to build this kind of products that are free or at least very cheap. The thing is that you have to research, you have to talk to people. Of course, you can talk to me, but there are people maybe in your language or in working on things that you are doing. In the world, working on fact-checking automation, we know everyone. We know between each other because we are, I don't know, maybe 10, 20. So you have to find your niche and connect with that people. Usually this is very collaborative. Because it makes no sense to create your product in a bubble. Maybe if you're a big corporation, it makes sense, but at least I think that people having this in this MOOC will care about doing things collaboratively. So open source is important, or trying to find open libraries. Of course, it will be great if you have in your team an engineer, or if you are an engineer that cares about the product. What we are doing, or what FullFact or anyone is building with automation, has been built with people that care about politics, not only about technology.
Right.
We were lucky enough to have an NLP engineer in our team that we didn't know that he was focused on that, Mariano Falcon, that he knew about that, because when we hired him, we didn't know that we were going to build a robot. So we were lucky on that, but we are lucky about having him because he cared about our mission, the mission of Chequeado and the mission of fact-checking. So that it's not like their usual job or something that maybe they can build for a big company that in Argentina, but I know that in other places it's difficult to hire an engineer. It's expensive. So it needs to be aligned with the mission. It's difficult, but it's something that we really care about. And actually now we have another developer that is called Joaquin Saralegui, that he's also aligned with the mission, and that makes things easier. So that's what two things. Try to find what is happening in your niche related with that, and maybe if there are open source tools, that will be great. And try to have engineers. Maybe start with a few hours if you don't have the money to hire them, but align with the mission. Go to community meetings, show up in meetups, talk with people, and that will help you.
This is great. I mean, I think that's really great advice, and it's really helpful to hear your thoughts on, connecting with the community and thinking about finding, the technical people who really are mission driven and can get behind this kind of journalistic production of. So that's what I had for us to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining us, Pablo. It was really great to have you here, and I look forward to keeping up with all of the new developments that you're working on there.
Thank you. And just in case I didn't mention, we built this with only one engineer for the first 2 years. So it's something that can be done with help and collaboration. So keep that in mind.
A very optimistic note to end things on. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.